Hello everyone, my name is Reed and welcome to Storytime. Today we are going to be reading some pro-revenge stories, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. You stole my car? I will make you homeless. This story happened approximately 4 years ago to a friend of mine. He and his wife, girlfriend back then, took a house loan, bought a new Chevrolet Camaro, and in general, they were preparing for a life together. He has proposed to her. Because of their lack of free time due to their hard working to pay off the loan, they didn't have time for themselves nor for the abnormal amount of other things such as housework. So they hired a maid. His first impressions about her were good and they decided that she's the person they will trust. And they handed her their house keys. Because they were at work most of the times, she came around to clean their house. First few weeks she worked hard and always paid attention to details and nicely cleaned their house from the bottom to the very top. She was also instructed not to let anyone in and to always lock the door when she left. After 6 months of her working there, strange things began to happen. Not in any anomalous way, but things started to disappear, being stolen. It all started with small things like AA batteries, which are barely noticeable missing, but soon things graduated to phone chargers, perfumes, the expensive ones, and some electrical gadgets went missing. My friend thought that he simply lost them, but soon the maid raised suspicion as the things went missing when my friend wasn't present when she was detailing their house. But without any evidence, blaming her wasn't in place. Also, he found out on some social media that she has got some serious debts, at least in thousands of dollars. Aliments, divorce court settlements, etc. So he decided to install security cameras and he didn't tell the maid. 5 weeks forward, and he had enough evidence to press charges on her as the things she stole were valued at $250 plus. In my country, anything stolen above $250 is considered a crime. He got furious when his flash disk containing private documents as well as some of his billing and official work documents were stolen. But he wanted her to get even more into the stealing so he can squish even the last cent out of her. So he came up with a plan. He told the maid that he and his girlfriend will be gone for a week for a honeymoon and that he will be going by a taxi as to not pay extra money airports charge for the parking. That means his brand new Chevrolet Camaro will stay parked in the house the maid has got the keys of. They rented an apartment through Airbnb just a few blocks away from his place, and he placed a GPS tracking keychain into his car so he could see where his car was through the phone app. He then placed the car keys in a visible spot on the house so the maid will notice. All that was left was to wait for the magic to happen, and his intuition was right. After 2 days of almost constant watching the GPS tracker's location, the car left the garage. All of a sudden, the car was cruising at 90 miles per hour on the highway. My friend immediately called the cops. They caught the maid something like 20 miles away. And now the revenge can take place. He decided to press charges on the maid. At the court, the maid told the judges my friend told her to drive the car to some untold location. She acted like she forgot where it was, and the one that should go to jail was him, because he wrongly accused her and he just wants to get money from her to pay his loan. But the tables turned. My friend and his lawyer showed up at the court with all of the video evidence of her stealing his stuff, valued highly above $250. It was like $40,000 including the car. So, it was a crime. She started swearing and telling every single lie she could think of. The security had to calm her down. She is facing 5 years in jail and she was charged $5,000 including all the stolen property but the car, his lawyer, and some other court stuff. The price was excluding the car because it was returned almost immediately. A few days later, police did a house check on her and most of the stolen stuff was there. There were also some other things reported missing from other customers of her. Due to her previous debts and her new ones she owes, she will very likely become a homeless person when she gets out of jail. Hope you will enjoy it! Interesting story. I'm not 100% sure you can videotape people without their permission, but maybe you can in certain instances. I mean, it was in your own home, so yeah, I guess it's probably legal. A-hole tailgates me when I'm already speeding, so I set them up for a speed trap. I was driving home from a get-together and was going 65 to 67 kilometers per hour, about 41 miles per hour, in a 60, 37 mile per hour zone. Where I'm from, the police almost never pull you over if you're going 10 or less over, but will definitely pull you over for anything over that. All was well until I got closer into my area. It's less city-like and more rural, with the roads alternating between single and double lanes. I'm on a single lane speeding, 10, about 6 miles per hour, over when a pickup truck in my rear view caught my attention. They were going a tad bit faster when they caught up to me and promptly braked a meter behind me. I was like, okay, I'll speed up to 70, which is 43 miles per hour. No big deal, but they continued to tailgate me. Upon closer inspection, I could see the mug of a very angry woman who had no understanding of personal space. What ensued was a full 5 minutes of them completely obscuring my rear view mirror with how close they were. I was tired and kind of hungover, so I really was not in the mood to be worrying about a potential car accident thanks to her driving. I was going to pull over to let her go around when Waze gave me a heads up that a police officer was reported up ahead. This was when I decided I'm gonna dole out some karma. I slowly dropped my speed from 70, around 43 miles per hour, to 60, which is around 37 miles per hour. Now, at the speed limit. This woman was furious. Why she just didn't pass me, I'll never know. But she was literally going slightly over the middle lane, yelling to herself in my rear view, flashing her full brights in a weird, show-offish way to get me to go faster. I did this for another minute before Waze showed the cop was less than a kilometer away. I put on my turn signal, very slowly pulled over, and watched this woman flip me the bird as she whipped past me, disappearing over the hill, now going way faster than 10 kilometers per hour over. I continued on my way, getting up to 70 kilometers an hour. When I cleared the hill to see the flashing lights ahead, jackpot. I drove with anticipation until I got close enough to confirm it was my friend from earlier. Not wanting to miss out on hitting her with our new secret greeting, I dropped down to 60 kilometers an hour, peered over, and flashed the bird back at her. I hope you enjoy the ticket, Karen. Oh, this is gold. I'm gonna have to start using Waze just for this purpose. Dad gets fired for BS reasons, plays the long game, ends up in charge, takes the extended family on a cruise. My dad had worked at the same company for almost 30 years before he was abruptly fired for complete bullcrap. He was coordinating an upcoming meeting of people who had to fly in from around the country. One important participant resigned unexpectedly, so Dad canceled the meeting via email and explained why. Apparently that counted as improperly communicating privileged information, and he was fired the next day. All this happened a week after Dad's boss retired and was replaced by a new guy who wanted to cut costs. What a coincidence. This was about 10 years ago, near the height of the recession. Dad was in his 50s, hadn't interviewed for a job since the early 1980s. He wasn't sure he'd ever find another job. My mom went back to work at a school to pay the bills, while Dad scraped together what he could by doing some crappy online consulting gigs for basically minimum wage. They managed to keep their heads above water, but only barely. Dad was out of work for a year and a half. He finally landed a job at a new company 3 states away. Coincidentally, about an hour away from where my wife and I lived and were expecting Dad's first grandchild. Mom and Dad moved to live about 20 minutes away from us. They had paid off the mortgage on their house, so they decided to keep it and rent it out, planning to retire there in a few years. New company treated Dad very well. Better salary than he'd made at the old company, good benefits, and respect from his coworkers and superiors. A year later, Mom and Dad were able to buy a second, smaller house near their grandkids. Dad mentioned a few things about his time at old company to his new bosses. Nothing confidential or anything, more like overall strengths and weaknesses. Of course, the story of how he got fired came out as well. It turns out that when you work at a company for over 25 years, you learn a thing or two about how it works, and cutting costs by firing experienced employees can make your company vulnerable. New companies started to get very interested. They saw an important business opportunity and also a chance to get revenge on behalf of a valued employee. A couple years later, new company bought old company. They were both big companies, and mergers of this size take time, but when the dust settled, it was clear there were redundancies, divisions and products that both companies had that new company only needed one of. They kept as many of old company's people as they could, and very few lost their jobs, except, of course, for the people responsible for firing Dad. New company put Dad in charge of the building he used to work in at old company and let him choose his employees from both old and new companies. Dad had to move back to the old state, so new company helped sell his house in the new state and give him a moving stipend of several $1,000s. But Mom and Dad were just moving back into their own house. They sold their new house and they'd made payments and improvements on for 5 years for a nice profit. With that money, plus the moving stipend, they paid off debts, saved for a retirement, and took me, my siblings, our spouses, and the grandkids on a cruise. The sweet justice in this makes me smile so big. Grandfather floods neighbor's house. When my grandfather was a kid, around 8 or 9, he lived in a house close to a woman, let's call her Susan, who would hit random kids if they did something stupid like step on her lawn. She also had a particular hatred towards my grandfather, who was always out about and having fun. She thought he lacked a sense of authority, even though the only interaction she had with him was seeing him walk past her house. One day, she grabbed my grandfather and dragged him to his house and tried to get him in trouble for picking up an apple he found on the sidewalk in front of her house. Not even her property. Apparently, she also tried to get the law involved at one point over this. My grandpa's mom didn't give a crap and just shut the door on the lady's face. A few weeks after that, the woman went on a trip and was going to be away for a few weeks. My grandfather decided to run to her house into her basement window and leave the water running. Apparently, there was 8+ feet of water in her basement by the time she got back, ruining almost all of her stuff. Not to mention the $4,000 plus in foundation damages it did to the house. So yeah, my grandpa tells that story a lot, and I always think it is funny when he does. The end. Yo, that is such a thug move right there, like, big props to OP's grandfather. That takes some guts. Alright, that's all the stories we have for today. If you liked what you heard, subscribe for more content. Thank you so much for listening, and have an amazing day!